I was late, not drastically, 15 minutes at most, but late enough that the rehearsal was already in full swing when I stepped through the doors of the event hall. I had misjudged traffic, or maybe I hadn't cared enough to rush. The truth is, I'd been dragging my feet without really knowing why. Something in my gut had felt off all day. I chalked it up to nerves, to the overwhelming surrealism of seeing my little girl walk down the aisle, even if just for practice. But the second I stepped into that room, I understood what had been bothering me. The lighting was soft and golden, that kind of overfiltered warm hue event planners charge extra for. The florist had outdone herself, draping the place in soft blush roses and eucalyptus, candles flickering in tall glass cylinders lining the aisle. A string quartet played something elegant but too familiar to notice, probably Pachelbel's canon or whatever people always pick for weddings. Chairs were filled. Guests had smiles plastered on their faces. It all looked picture-perfect. Except it wasn't. My eyes scanned the front, looking for Molly. I expected her to be seated, probably on her phone scrolling through seating arrangements or texting Emma about something tiny but urgent, the way she always did when she was nervous. Instead, I saw her standing, laughing at something. Not just standing. She was with someone. A man. And not just any man. Alex. That name landed like a glass breaking on tile. Alex. From my company. A former employee who'd left about 2 years ago under odd, forgettable circumstances. He wasn't fired, but he didn't quit on a high note either. Just left. Disappeared after Molly had stopped by the office one day. At the time, I hadn't thought much of it. Now, everything rewound in my head like a film reel unraveling too fast. He was talking to Molly like they were the ones getting married. Too close. His body tilted toward hers with familiarity that made my stomach drop. And then his damn hand, rested on her waist. Not briefly, not accidentally, casually, like it belonged there. She didn't pull away. She didn't even look surprised to see him. She leaned into it, smiling, laughing like I wasn't even in the room. Or worse, like I never existed. I froze in place. It's hard to explain what that moment felt like. People talk about betrayal as this sharp stab, this instant cut. But this wasn't that. This was a quiet kind of devastation. Like standing on a frozen lake and hearing the first crack form beneath your feet. You know you're not falling yet. But it's coming. You can feel it. I moved down the aisle toward them, still not sure what to say or do. When the music shifted and the rehearsal began, Emma stepped out from behind the partition in her white dress. It wasn't the actual wedding dress, of course, just a casual rehearsal version. But she looked radiant, nervous, focused, like she was trying to memorize every step. And then, something happened that shattered me in a way I didn't think possible. Alex stepped forward, calm, smiling like he'd earned the right, and met her halfway down the aisle. He placed his hand gently on her shoulder and said something I couldn't hear. Emma nodded. She smiled. Not awkwardly, not uncertainly. She smiled like this was how it had always been. That moment should have been mine. That's the part that broke me. That shoulder was mine to steady. That walk was mine to share. I had imagined that moment since she was 6 and had to be carried out of ballet class crying because the music was too loud. I had pictured it 1,000 times during the years I spent staying late at work so we could afford things like college, and this wedding, and the countless invisible safety nets that hold a family together. But now, that role had been quietly reassigned. Without announcement, without explanation. It wasn't just a mistake, it was a recasting. And everyone seemed in on it but me. I finally made my way to the front row. Numb. Molly noticed me then. Her eyes landed on me with a flicker of something. Guilt? Surprise? Maybe not even that. Maybe it was annoyance. Her expression didn't say, "I'm glad you're here." It said, "Don't make a scene." I sat down next to her. Alex had already taken a seat behind us, chatting with someone like he was part of the family. I leaned in and whispered, "What is he doing here?" She didn't flinch. "He's helping. Friend of the family," she replied, as if that explained anything. Friend of the family. I almost laughed, but nothing about it was funny. I wanted to say, "Since when?" I wanted to stand up and demand to know how everyone seemed to accept him like he'd always been part of this moment. But I didn't, because I knew exactly what would happen. I'd be accused of overreacting, of making Emma's day about me, of being jealous, petty, controlling. So instead I just nodded, like a man accepting a sentence he hadn't realized was being read. The rest of the rehearsal went on in a haze. I clapped when people clapped. I smiled when I needed to. I shook hands, gave hugs, posed for pictures. But none of it felt real. The music blurred. My daughter looked happy. My wife looked radiant. And I felt like a ghost, like I had already been erased. Afterward, at dinner, Alex sat beside Molly again. He was laughing with Emma's fiancé, making everyone laugh with stories I hadn't heard before. I kept catching Emma looking at him, listening to him, with the kind of open admiration kids reserve for their parents. And suddenly, every strange moment from the past year began to slot into place. I remembered the gym Molly joined, an hour away for some reason. The way she started dressing a little younger, investing in new makeup, new routines. Her sudden obsession with me time. Her phone always placed screen down on the table. How she'd come home late smelling like unfamiliar cologne and offer vague excuses about traffic or errands. I remembered how she took time off when Alex left the company. At the time, I thought she was just being thoughtful, helping clean up loose ends for the team. But now I wondered what kind of loose ends those had been. And Emma, sweet, loyal Emma, had started talking about Alex more recently, calling him a good influence, saying things like, "He really helped Mom while you were so busy with work." I had assumed she was just trying to be supportive. Now it all sounded rehearsed, like a line practiced too many times in front of a mirror. That night at home, I asked Molly directly, "So, how long has Alex been part of the family, exactly?" She raised her eyebrows. "What's that supposed to mean?" "Just curious. Didn't know we were so close with him." She shrugged. Emma wanted help planning the details. "Alex is organized. He stepped up. That's all." "That's all," I repeated. But we both knew it wasn't. She turned off the light and rolled over, her back to me. And I stared at the ceiling, 1,000 questions screaming silently in my head. I didn't know the full story yet. Not then. But I knew enough that I didn't sleep that night. Not even a little. I lay there next to Molly, both of us pretending to be asleep, both facing away from each other. The silence between us louder than any argument we could have had. And in that silence, everything finally clicked. I'd always thought betrayal would come with alarms. Something unmistakable. A confession. A fight. A slammed door. But it hadn't. It had come in fragments. Small things I'd brushed aside for months, maybe even years. Tiny inconsistencies that only now started to make sense when viewed as a whole. Molly's behavior had shifted gradually, like a tide coming in so slowly you don't realize how far it's reached until your feet are underwater. It started innocently enough. She joined a new gym across town, an upscale place with a juice bar and personal trainers. "I need a change," she said. "A new atmosphere. Something to motivate me." It didn't seem suspicious at the time. I was actually proud of her for taking better care of herself. But then came the excuses. The gym sessions started running longer. 2 hours. Sometimes 3. Always in the evenings. She'd come home late, claiming she'd stayed for yoga or talked to someone about meal planning. Once, she said she ran into a friend from college and grabbed a smoothie. Another time, she said she took the long route home to clear her head. But there was something off. She'd arrive back flustered, like she'd rushed. Her hair always pulled up, her phone always in her hand, but the screen always turned away. I remember asking her once, gently, "Everything okay? You've been gone a while." She smiled too quickly. "It's just hard to find balance," she said. "I'm trying to take care of myself. Is that a problem now?" And just like that, I became the villain for asking a simple question. Then there was the change in wardrobe. Subtle at first. A few new pieces she said she'd picked up on sale. A new brand of lipstick I didn't recognize. Then came the sharper clothes, the more fitted tops, the extra time spent getting ready, just to run errands. I used to tease her lovingly for always dressing up, even for the grocery store. But she stopped laughing at the jokes. "I just want to feel good about myself," she'd say, and I'd nod, trying not to sound suspicious, trying to be supportive. That's what husbands are supposed to do, right? It wasn't until I caught the scent that I really started to wonder. One night, she kissed me on the cheek after coming home late and I caught it. Cologne. Not mine. Not familiar. Something subtle and musky, like cedarwood and something citrusy. "New perfume?" I asked. She blinked, just for a split second. "Oh, must have been the guy behind me in line," she said with a laugh. "Long line at the smoothie bar." The smoothie bar. I should have asked more, pressed harder. But part of me didn't want the answer. And then there was the day Alex left the company. I didn't think about it at the time. It barely registered. One of my assistant managers had mentioned he'd submitted his resignation unexpectedly. No real explanation. I remember shrugging it off. He was a capable guy, but not irreplaceable. I signed the exit papers, moved his files, forgot about him. But now I realize Molly took that same week off. She claimed she wanted to declutter the house and focus on herself. I even joked about her finally watching those documentaries she always queued up but never started. She smiled and said maybe she'd clean the garage. She never touched the garage. Now I wonder what she did instead. The next red flag came from Emma. Sweet, observant Emma, though I hadn't recognized it as one at the time. A few months ago, she started bringing up Alex in conversations more frequently. At first it was minor. "Alex suggested this photographer." Or, "Alex says the venue has great lighting for pictures." I didn't think much of it. I figured he was helping with planning. Maybe Molly had pulled him in to assist with logistics. That's how she is, always outsourcing to stay ahead. But then Emma began talking about him in a way that felt scripted. "Alex has been such a good influence on Mom lately," she said one day over lunch. "She seems happier." "Happier?" I asked, caught off guard. "Yeah, more alive, you know?" Emma smiled, swirling her straw in her iced tea. She said he's been helping her think more positively about things. I nodded, pretending to understand. Helping her? Yeah, he's good with people. He listens, like really listens. I think that's what Mom needed. That should have been the moment. Right there. A daughter casually telling her father that some other man was filling a role he didn't even know he'd left vacant. But I missed it. I ignored it, smoothed it over in my mind like I'd done with everything else. I chalked her words up to stress, to pre-wedding nerves, to the natural drift that happens when people grow older together. But the truth is, I hadn't been blind. I had simply chosen not to see. Looking back, it's incredible how good people can get at hiding things, until they stop trying. That rehearsal wasn't a mistake. It wasn't a lapse in judgment. It was the first time the mask slipped because it didn't need to stay on anymore. Alex had shown up not as a guest, not even as a friend, but as a fixture, like he belonged. And Molly? She didn't try to hide it. Not her body language. Not her smile. Not the way she let him step into the space I was supposed to occupy. It was all deliberate. Subtle, but deliberate. A recasting of the male lead in the third act. I remember lying there in bed that night, watching the ceiling shift in and out of shadow, thinking about all the quiet sacrifices I had made. Late nights at the office. Early mornings packing Emma's lunches when Molly was too tired. Weekends running errands while she claimed me time. I never complained. Not once. Because that's what marriage is. You carry the weight together, or so I believed. Now I realize I'd been carrying more than my share for a long time. And someone else had been waiting to take the lighter end. That night I didn't confront her. I didn't storm out. I didn't scroll through her messages or dig through her purse or demand answers. I didn't need to. I already knew. The picture was complete. The puzzle I had been fumbling through for months had finally formed a clear image. And in it, I was standing just outside the frame. I didn't confront Molly the next morning. I went through the motions, coffee, keys, work, as if everything was normal. She made eggs I didn't ask for. I thanked her like I always did. She kissed me on the cheek before I left, and I smiled. But we both knew something had changed. It was like a wire had snapped between us overnight, and instead of acknowledging it, we both acted like it had never been there to begin with. 2 days after the rehearsal, I remembered that I'd left a folder at the office. Just one of those small things that doesn't matter until it suddenly does. I hadn't planned on going in that day. It was a Saturday, the kind of quiet weekend when the building is practically empty. But I needed the distraction, and the idea of doing something simple, something routine, felt like a relief. When I pulled into the lot, I saw her car already parked near the side entrance. At first, I thought maybe she was dropping something off. Maybe she had her own reason for being here, documents, or maybe flowers for someone's birthday. It didn't make sense, but I wasn't thinking clearly. I didn't want it to make sense. I wanted to believe I was reading too much into everything. Even now, the glass door was unlocked. I stepped inside and instantly noticed the lights were on. Not just in the hallway, but in the main conference room. Our office wasn't large, just one floor, mostly open layout, a couple private rooms in the back. I walked in, careful not to make noise. My shoes clicked quietly against the laminate floor, each step sounding louder than it should have. From where I stood near the front desk, I could already see into the conference room. Something caught my eye, a familiar shape on the long oak table. My coffee mug. I hadn't seen it in weeks. It had been missing from my desk, and I assumed someone had borrowed it and forgotten to return it. Now here it was. Only it wasn't empty. It was half full. And on the rim was lipstick. Not red. A subtle coral color, one I'd seen on Molly many times. The mug sat next to a paper napkin that still held the faint outline of a bite from a sandwich or maybe a croissant. 2 jackets had been tossed over the backs of the leather chairs. One of them was hers. The other belonged to Alex. I didn't need to search. I didn't need to open doors or call out names. I already knew. But still, I moved quietly toward the back. The private room near the rear of the building had once been used for interviews. It was rarely locked. A small office with a couch, no windows, and soundproof walls for privacy. I had used it myself countless times, never for anything more than closing deals or offering counsel to employees going through hard times. But now, as I approached, I could hear something muffled inside. Not voices. Sounds. Soft. Int asterisk mate. Familiar in the worst possible way. I froze outside the door, heart pounding. I didn't move. I didn't knock. I didn't throw it open. I stood still, every part of me screaming to walk away before I saw more than I already knew. There's a specific kind of pain that comes not from discovering something, but from confirming it. That irreversible moment where suspicion becomes certainty, where the benefit of the doubt quietly dies, and in its place grows something cold and permanent. I turned around. I didn't slam any doors. I didn't yell. I didn't text her. I walked back the way I came, keeping my eyes forward, breathing through the tightness in my chest. As I exited the building, the sky was overcast. Everything felt muted. The world had not changed, but I had. I drove home on autopilot, hands steady on the wheel, jaw locked. I didn't cry. Not because I wasn't devastated. I was, but the tears had already happened. Months of slow heartbreak that I hadn't recognized as such. They'd come on long drives, in the silence after arguments that never happened, in all the ways Molly had pulled away from me while pretending she hadn't. By the time I stepped through the front door, the numbness had already set in. She arrived home hours later. She didn't mention being at the office. She smelled like peppermint gum and hand sanitizer. She said she'd been running errands. I nodded. She asked how my day had been. I said fine. She kissed me again, and I let her, because I had nothing left to say. What could I possibly say that wouldn't humiliate me more? That I had walked in on the evidence of my own displacement? That I had finally seen the cracks in my life and confirmed what I was always too afraid to name? No, there was dignity in silence. And that's what I chose. We sat in the living room that night, each of us on opposite ends of the couch, pretending to scroll through our phones. She laughed at a video, held her screen toward me. I smiled, barely glancing at it. I watched her more than I watched the screen. Watched the way she tilted away from me now, slightly, the way her legs angled toward the edge of the cushion. Watched the way she lit up when her phone buzzed, how quickly she read, how quickly she turned it over again. I thought of that coffee mug, the lipstick, the jackets, the sounds. And still I said nothing. It wasn't because I was scared of confrontation. I'd handled worse in my life. Family emergencies, layoffs, surgeries, disasters. I wasn't afraid of raising my voice. I was afraid of what might happen after. That she'd deny it. That she'd say it didn't mean anything. That she'd lie so casually it would confirm how little I meant now. Instead, I kept that truth to myself like a private funeral. A mourning I didn't want her to attend. The next day, I went to work like usual. Sorted emails. Checked in with my assistant. No one knew what I was carrying. I didn't tell anyone. I didn't even write it down. I just sat there, in the same building where it had happened, surrounded by walls that now knew more than I wished they did. In a meeting that afternoon, Alex's name came up. Someone asking if I remembered how he'd handled a client account. I nodded. He was good at appearances, I said. Nothing more. Molly texted around noon, asking if we needed anything from the store. I replied, no, that was all. No heart emoji. No thanks, babe. No see you soon. She didn't ask why. That evening, I stood on the back porch and watched the sun dip behind the trees. It was quiet, so quiet. And for the first time in years, I realized I didn't want to share that quiet with her. The silence had once been our refuge. A shared language. Now it was evidence. By then, I knew what I had to do. Not loudly. Not with fireworks. But deliberately. Quietly. Like a man slipping off a ring and placing it in a drawer. Not because he's angry, but because it no longer belongs on his hand. She came out onto the porch later, barefoot, a glass of wine in hand. You okay? She asked. I didn't look at her. Just thinking. About what? I took a breath. Let it out slowly. Everything. She didn't ask what I meant. She didn't want to know. And I was done giving answers. People expect explosions. When they hear about betrayal, about infidelity, about the collapse of a marriage, they picture yelling. Tears. Shattered plates. Maybe even police lights outside a house once filled with Christmas lights and barbecue smoke. But that's not how I reacted. I didn't scream. I didn't even curse. I became still. It was like a switch flipped inside me. Something in me just shut off. The version of me that would have fought, that would have begged for explanations, that would have taken the blame just to feel loved again. That version died somewhere between the coffee mug and the silence on the back porch. And in its place grew someone else. Someone sharper, quieter, focused. I didn't burn bridges. I disassembled them, one bolt at a time. That weekend, while Molly spent Saturday afternoon running errands, I sat at the kitchen table with a cup of black coffee and a notepad. I didn't journal. I didn't rant. I made a list, one line at a time. Everything I had contributed to Emma's wedding. Financially, logistically, emotionally. Venue. Paid in full by me 6 months ago. Caterer. Deposit secured on my card. Florist. Contracted through Molly, but the payment came from our joint account, mostly funded by me. Photographer. My referral. My signature on the contract. Dress. Partial down payment from the family fund I'd been building since Emma was a toddler. Wedding website. Built by me, maintained by me. All threads. And I was the one holding the spool. I didn't need a tantrum. I needed a scalpel. I started with the venue. I still had the coordinator's contact saved from the day we took a tour and Emma cried seeing the outdoor terrace. I sent a simple email. This is to inform you that due to unforeseen family circumstances, we will no longer be proceeding with the event scheduled for next month. As the original contracting party and financial guarantor, I am formally requesting cancellation effective immediately. Please advise regarding the refund policy. I didn't copy Molly. I didn't warn Emma. I hit send, closed the laptop, and moved on. The caterer came next. Same process. Then the florist, who offered her condolences before even asking what went wrong. These things happen, she said on the phone. Are you okay, Mr. Prescott? I told her I was. I lied, but only a little. The photographer was confused. You're sure you want to cancel? Yes. Should I notify the bride? No. I will. But I didn't. Not yet. I logged into the bank account and reviewed the transactions. Found the payment toward Emma's dress. I hadn't thought much of it at the time. Just another item in a long list of fatherly duties. But now, it felt like I had funded a play I was no longer allowed to act in. I froze the card linked to the bridal shop and marked the charge for reversal. Not out of cruelty. Just clarity. The wedding website took less than 10 minutes. I opened the dashboard, disabled the countdown, removed the RSVP section, and replaced the homepage photo with a simple message. This event has been canceled. We thank you for your understanding and privacy. Then I logged out, closed the browser, and stared at the empty screen for a long time. There was no dramatic music, no epiphany, just quiet, a slow unfolding of the truth I'd already lived through. This wasn't revenge. This was extraction. Molly came home later that afternoon with groceries and a new candle that smelled like lavender and something synthetic. She chatted about a neighbor she'd run into, asked if I wanted to grill that night. I nodded, said sure. Like we were still us. Like I hadn't just unraveled the single largest day of our daughter's life from the inside out. That night, we sat on the porch again. She scrolled through her phone. I grilled steaks. We didn't speak much. At some point, she asked, "Have you heard from the venue lately? They haven't sent the final confirmation." I took a sip of water. "Not recently." She nodded and went back to scrolling. That was the thing she still didn't suspect. Maybe she thought I didn't have it in me. Maybe she thought I'd go down quietly, that I'd continue to show up, smile, hand over money, and keep pretending like Alex hadn't replaced me 1 inch at a time. But I was already gone. Not physically, but where it mattered. The next day, I went into the garage and opened every box labeled wedding. There were dozens, handwritten signs, candles, backup linens, gifts from early guests. I sorted through each one, setting aside anything I had paid for personally. Then I made a donation pile. Half of it went into the trunk of my car and was dropped off at a local church that hosted community weddings for low-income couples. No ceremony. No call to Molly. I simply left the supplies and drove home lighter. I spent the rest of that Sunday cleaning my office. Not metaphorically. Literally. My home office had always been mine, but slowly over the years it had absorbed Molly's presence. Extra sweaters, her Kindle, her favorite mug that somehow lived on my bookshelf now. I boxed it all up. Every trace of her. I didn't throw it away. I just placed it in the guest room closet. A silent boundary. I changed the locks on the office door. Installed a keypad. She noticed the next morning. "When did we get a code on your door?" "Yesterday." "Oh." A pause. "Do I get the code?" "No." She laughed like I was joking. I didn't laugh back. That was the first time she looked at me differently. Not scared. Not angry. Just uncertain. As if I had shifted in a way she didn't recognize. But still, she didn't ask why. That week, I began sleeping on the guest room mattress. Not because of a fight, not after some dramatic argument. I just needed space. She didn't follow. Didn't knock. She left a note on the nightstand once. "We should talk." I didn't respond. The note stayed there until it curled at the edges. On Wednesday, Emma called. I didn't answer. On Thursday, she left a voicemail. She sounded panicked. Said the florist was confused. The caterer had emailed her asking for a confirmation of the cancellation. I sat at my desk, listening to her voice tremble through the speaker. "Dad, what's going on? Why is everyone saying the wedding's off? Is this a mistake?" I didn't call her back, because it wasn't a mistake. It was a correction, a recalibration of my place in this story. By Friday, the house felt different. Not empty exactly, just quieter in a way that felt deliberate. I didn't pack a suitcase. I didn't write a letter. I just moved through each room and began separating my life from the pieces I'd spent too long sacrificing for people who hadn't noticed. I wasn't trying to hurt anyone. I was just done pretending this was mine to fix. It didn't take long for the silence to become a spectacle. By Monday morning, the ripple effects of my withdrawal had spread far beyond our family group chat. The first real wave came from the venue. Their coordinator called me directly, her voice tight but polite. Mr. Prescott, I just wanted to confirm that we did process the cancellation. However, your daughter has contacted us this morning and is insisting it was a mistake. She says no one approved the change. I stayed quiet for a second longer than necessary. Then I said, there was no mistake. The contract was under my name. The funds came from my account. Consider the cancellation final. She hesitated. Should we inform her of your confirmation? No, I said. Let them figure it out. That afternoon, I stopped checking my phone. The calls started coming in one after another. Emma, Molly, even Molly's sister Karen, who rarely called unless someone died. Emma left 3 voicemails, each one more frantic than the last. Dad, what's going on? Why is everything getting canceled? I can't reach the photographer, and Mom's freaking out. Please call me back. I don't understand what's happening. Did I do something wrong? I didn't respond. Couldn't. Because it wasn't just one thing. It wasn't a fight. It wasn't even about the wedding anymore. It was about the fact that somewhere along the line, I had become the placeholder, useful, quiet, dependable, and nothing more. And the moment I stopped playing that part, the entire structure began to shake. Molly didn't say anything to me for almost 2 full days. She sulked around the house like a roommate who'd been locked out of her own bedroom, rattling drawers louder than necessary, sighing like punctuation. On Tuesday night, she finally confronted me, if you can call it that. We were both in the kitchen. I was pouring coffee. She was standing across from me with her arms crossed, waiting for eye contact I wouldn't give her. Are you going to tell me what this is all about? She asked. This, the wedding, the cancellations, the money. Emma's in pieces. People are calling. You deleted the entire website. What are you doing? I'm stepping out, I said, without raising my voice. From everything I wasn't invited into in the first place. She blinked. What does that even mean? I looked at her then, really looked. She was still beautiful, still composed, but there was something brittle behind her eyes. A flicker of panic, maybe, or recognition, like she was finally catching up to the fact that the scaffolding she'd built had started to collapse, and she didn't have the tools to stop it. You gave my place away, Molly, I said quietly, piece by piece, conversation by conversation, until I was just a name on the RSVP list. You just didn't expect me to notice. That's not true. It is, I said, and you know it. She didn't argue. She turned and walked upstairs. By Wednesday, things had gone public. Someone, probably one of Emma's friends, posted a confused message on Facebook about the wedding being paused due to family complications. That post was shared, **Ted, and reposted in the local town group within an hour. Then a wedding blogger picked it up. I don't know how it got that far. Maybe someone who worked at the venue or the caterer, maybe someone desperate for clicks. But there it was, right on the homepage. Father of the bride cancels wedding after mysterious incident at rehearsal. The comments section exploded. Some people speculated I had gone off the deep end. Others blamed Molly. A few applauded me, saying they wished they'd had the guts to do the same. And then came the DMs, from people I hadn't spoken to in years. College buddies, former colleagues, even an old neighbor who once borrowed my hedge trimmer and never returned it. Hey man, saw the story. Everything okay? Wow, just read the article. Brave move. Dude, I didn't even know you had a daughter getting married. I didn't reply to any of them. I just sat on the porch that evening, watching the sky fade from orange to gray, phone in my lap, unread notifications piling up like leaves. Inside, I could hear Molly crying. I didn't go to her, because I had cried already, quietly, alone, weeks ago, maybe months, long before anyone else realized something was wrong. On Thursday, Emma showed up at the house. I knew she would. The moment I saw her car in the driveway, I braced myself. She came in without knocking, as she always had. Still my daughter. Still filled with the same fire I'd loved since she was a little girl building Lego castles with a fierce sense of order. Dad, she said, her voice already cracking. What are you doing? What is happening? I motioned for her to sit, but she stayed standing. You canceled everything, she said. Everything. The venue, the flowers, the food. Do you have any idea what that did to me? To Mom. I nodded. Yes. Then why? I studied her face. She looked like Molly. Same posture, same tone when she was angry. But her eyes were mine. And in them I saw something beginning to shift. A question forming that she hadn't let herself ask yet. Because I saw the truth, I said. She waited. What truth? You already know. Her expression wavered. She shook her head like a stubborn child. No, I don't. This isn't fair. You've been distant for months. You just vanished from the planning. And now you're blowing it all up. I didn't blow anything up, I said calmly. I just stopped pretending. That broke something in her. Her arms fell to her sides. Alex, she whispered. This is about Alex, isn't it? I said nothing. She looked away. Mom said it was nothing, that they were just close friends. She said you were being paranoid. I gave her a moment. She lied, didn't she? Emma asked, her voice smaller now. I didn't answer, because she already knew. Her eyes welled with tears, and she finally sat down across from me, like her strength had drained all at once. You could have told me, she said. I wanted you to see it for yourself. And she had. I didn't need to say another word. That night, Molly came into the guest room. She didn't knock. She just stood there, barefoot, in a t-shirt too big for her frame. You've destroyed everything, she said softly. No, I replied. I just stopped holding it together. She didn't cry this time. She didn't plead. She just turned and walked away. By Friday, the phone had stopped ringing. The comments slowed. The blog post faded under a wave of newer stories, celebrity breakups and trending scandals. But in our house, the collapse lingered. I didn't throw a grenade. I removed the foundation, and the sound of everything crashing down, it was deafening.